video response for the room. So the first thing to think about that it is chemical or biohazard. When they're in that room, there's a reason why they're in that room, because they're reservoir. Then it's to figure it out how to what kind of reservoir they are. So we were talking about in a previous video. Are they contact? Are they droplets? Or are they airborne? Droplet means we'll go from the middle and then we'll take the other two separate. So if you take like a Windex bottle or something and you press on it, what comes out that you can see are what we call droplets. They're way smaller than that, but it will give you an idea. So if you take a bottle with water and put a colorant in it and then just sprays all around, that's pretty much every time that somebody breathes or cough, things will spread over. And so usually there's a parameter around the beds or the person stays that all this, but if they start walking, so that means all those circle gets a little bit better. So this is why we put them in those rooms, and this is why putting a mask on them decreased how much they have, especially if you have a protocol like I was saying to open windows and circulate. The thing though is that, let's say they're in that room for whatever reason, if they get out of their rooms, then they can contaminate the rest of their house. So that means that anything that you need as a server, as a survivor, that means they need, and they need to be separate with you. Especially for the first category that we'll talk about, which probably, because the droplet ones for influenza, so that could be a big pandemic. But one that a lot of people don't think about is GI issues, or gastrointestinal, diarrhea, and especially the cause of diarrhea. A lot of people carry fish antibiotic, the broad spectrum, and that can create something called Clostridium difficile, which is C. diff. And you hear a lot about C. diff. This is a nasty one, and if you go through the news, tons of old folks, retirement homes and assisted living homes, there's like pandemic going in through this because one patient got C. diff, he went to the hospital or brought it back, or they got an antibiotic because he had an infection, got it, and now it's through the whole facility. So it's really important to share them. The other one, and just you ate something that especially if you would be in a disaster situation where you would either do your own hunting or your home growing, you could have like some bad parasites coming out. And a lot of people seems to believe that parasites only exist in developing countries instead. No, if there would be a big enough disaster, eating squirrels or pigeons or things that we're not used to eat, they could be a big carrier of vectors and disease. There was actually a presentation I went once, and people now, they were seeing 3 outbreaks in the last 2 years, I think, of a parasite that usually are only in developing country. Why? Because people, what they were doing is they grow their own, they want to be self-reliant, and they use the manure of the pork to grow their own food. The problem is that they don't process it properly, and then the pork worm gets transferred to the food, where it's the salad, the carrots and stuff, and then when people eat that, then they get the disease, which can obviously come with people in self-reliance, which they would be eating more of that kind of stuff. So why am I talking about all this is that one thing in the kit that I think was missing and big important is to have your own self water, sanitation, and waste. So that means having a portable party. So I would add garbage bag, and even have a separate color, so that way that you know, for example, orange. The orange bag would be contaminated material. if you ever been in a hospital around like what we call dirty rooms, you'll see they have the yellow bins, and the yellow bins mean this is biohazard. So that means there's bloods in it, or blood product, or body fluid products. So vomiting, uh, uh, gastric contents, everything are in those bags. And so if you would have the kind of a similar, so orange bag or things like that, that you know when you have this, you have to wear the proper PPE. It has to be disposed the proper way. But one simple ways also would be to have like something like this. And now with camping and stuff, so this what it is basically a portable bucket. So that means they could have their own water, they could wash their own hands, they could drink, could vomit in it, they could use it for all this, and this is only to be used in the contamination room. So that way it wouldn't be able to contaminate the rest of the people. So that you know that if you're using this, that's what it's for. It could be used as a toilet. Obviously, you would have to create a little bit and you would have to squat, but it could be used as a portable. The beauty with this thing, again, it's self-contained. It's a material that contain fluids inside, so it's made for water, but it's very compact and very easy. There's other ones that you can have that are like even smaller than that, but that would be a good thing. The second thing would be to have water in his own system. One of the reasons as well is to have water in the second of those is that when you go inside the room, you'll need to clean your hands. Alcohol is great for certain things, and especially when you start talking about GI contact, which is just more than contact. Alcohol do not kill C. diff and some other gastrointestinal. So diarrhea, you're not supposed to just use alcohol. You're supposed to use soap, pure soap, and actually wash your hands. Certain disease are resistant to alcohol. Most of them, so like influenza and everything, alcohol is a great killer. But especially when you start talking into the diarrhea or vomiting category, I would wash my hands with soap. So one of those bottles that has a little nozzle, you can create a nice system where basically, because don't forget that if I open, so let's say I had a contaminated glove and now I want to clean my hands, and I grab this and I push, everything that you touch the reservoir, so we'll call the patient the reservoir, anything that you touch that either that person touched or the surface that it touched, now you have it on you. And now if you're going to use that system, take off your glove and clean, the bacteria is in there and then it's going on you. So it's really important to have a system where you would be able to self open water, and I'll put a link down of a different ways that you can build it. But one easy way would be to have some of those bottles that basically you unclip, or even a bottle of water that you can buy at the store, like those bottles that you just unclip, because by unclipping it, you're releasing the water, and basically now you would be able to clean your hands and without having to touch it. And so you would just have to refill the water, clean your hands, and when you use it, you have it like open. But don't retouch something that after you clean your hands. So after saying self-contained water system, waste management, so that means cleaning and obviously urinating, or it's mostly stool than urine, excreta that we call. The other thing that too I would ask is you made a door, but you talk about having a door that you can unzip and stuff. But if you have a separate room before you get into the room, a chamber before you get into the room, that even decrease your chance of getting contamination in and out. For example, after Ebola, they came with a new protocols. And so before, it was during the Ebola, which I call the Ebola scare because it was more scary than the actual risk of us getting Ebola. But anyway, uh, I don't want to get into that topic, but um, they taught us a certain way, and then now it became a what they call the unknown. So when we have new disease that they're not quite sure what it is, instead of putting, so it would be above the regular, so airborne, like we know X is airborne, Z is contact. When it's an unknown one and it's kind of developing, they want us to use this new protocol. It's very intense, labor wise, and getting dressed up, because not only that you have to wear all the contamination, all the same system that you use for decontaminating chemical, but also when you get dressed, it needs 3 people that are trained. One to witness you getting dressed, one helping you to get dressed, and each person, then the person getting dressed going inside. And so you always need 3 person to get dressed, and you have to double glove and triple glove. And then even when we get into the room, we have to clean our feet in a little bath and things like that. So that would be another way of getting maybe a second one, where in the antechamber, cleaning your feet before you go in, or finding a certain way, a pair of shoes or something to cover your shoes when you go in and out. And to decrease the contamination, if you can have the antechamber, where basically it's a chamber between you and the decon room, then you'll be a little bit safer. You could undress easier. You would, even if a door gets left open, the draft wouldn't contaminate all the house. So you always close one door before you open the next door. So that would be another room. And it seems like from the zipper thing that he had with the doors would be pretty easy. It would just to be, instead of having one, I would add a second one. So the zipper to go inside the room, and another zipper to go to another chamber, and just add another square of system where you go in between the 2 rooms. So that's another thing that I would add. Otherwise, I'll show you what I have in my kit, but those were the main ones that I would add. And also I wanted to mention a little bit, rooms like this, a lot of people like they were talking about the filters. One thing that I wanted to mention as well is that the room that he chose, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, has a lot of windows, and seems like it's very sunny in there. And I'll show that, and I'll put the link down. There's a great video, a lot of studies have been done, especially in third world countries, where tuberculosis, which is very easily spreadable and pretty dangerous once you get it, that UV kills up to 70%, 70% of the bacteria. And so just having a good ventilation and a room that has received a lot of sun, the UV protection kills all the systems inside. But also you have to keep in mind that having all those plastics inside, it can become an inferno with somebody with a fever already, which could help actually, because it would mean increase their body system, but it wouldn't be very comfortable to stay inside all the time with all this sun warming it up and keeping the heat. So a good ventilation would be necessary for a room like this. So find a way of maybe some of those doors. I would add maybe to 2 windows or slits to the windows, and make sure that obviously you have a protocol of an entrance. So for example, before I go in, I'm in the antechamber. I make so let's say 10 minutes before I go in, for whatever reason, to bring the meals or something like that, or to do a dressing change, I would ask the person, if they're able, open the 2 windows, create a ventilation for, let's say, 10 minutes, close the windows, go into the antechamber, confirm with the person that they're wearing the mask, because again, I'll be wearing some of the mask, but if they can decrease the risk of having, so while they're ventilating, they could be wearing their own mask, and so now all the air has less of circulation of the droplets. Airborne, again, a little bit different, but all this has cleared up the air. Then it can go in and process. So again, a protocol, and Mr. Urban Prepper loved PDF. That would be a great PDF to do, of procedure of going in the room and coming out of the room, and maybe even have somebody else that supervise, if you have the means to do it, to make sure that, because after like 5 days, 6 days of this, people get tired and you forget about things and stuff. And so to make sure that everybody is supervised and concentrating on the task or something like that. So that would be the last thing that I would kind of add to this protocol. So that was a short video on what I would add. Now I'll show you what I have in my kit.